The office was a world of noise without purpose. Typewriters clacking like broken rifles, computers humming, the stale smell of ink and dust thick in the air. Folders stacked to the ceiling leaned precariously, ready to topple onto whoever drew the short straw. It was where the forgotten soldiers were sent, the ones not meant for the field. The place where paper outweighed steel. Clara Whitlock sat at her desk, back straight, hands moving with quiet precision as she typed out after-action reports no one ever read. Her fatigues were plain, clean but unadorned, no decorations, no stories stitched into her uniform, at least not where anyone could see them. The others passed by, boots heavy on the linoleum, their voices lowered but sharp enough to cut. "Paper, soldier," one muttered, glancing sideways at her. "Pushes pencils better than bullets," another whispered, smirking. Clara kept her eyes on the page. The corners of her mouth didn't twitch, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing hurt. She simply pressed another key, the black letters marching across the page in silent defiance. The door slammed open, and the air shifted. Major Kessler strode in, his presence heavier than the stack of reports on her desk. His voice cracked like a whip. "Whitlock." She rose halfway out of her chair, heels clicking together. "Sir." He looked her up and down, eyes narrowing like she was a stain he couldn't scrub out. "Stay behind your desk, Whitlock. We fight out there. You file in here." The words stung, but she didn't flinch. She simply nodded, lowering herself back into the chair with controlled calm. Her fingers folded the papers neatly, her movements deliberate, measured, like a soldier marching in perfect step. But her silence wasn't submission, it was armor. As the room fell back into the rhythm of clerks and machines, the camera of imagination lingered on her wrist. The fabric of her sleeve slid just slightly, the leather strap of her watch hiding something underneath. A faint line peeked out, like the shadow of a scar. She adjusted it quickly, pulling the cuff back into place before anyone could notice. Around her, the others laughed, joked, traded stories about the field. To them, Clara Whitlock was a body in a chair, a name on a duty roster, the kind of soldier who made sure their paychecks cleared and their ammo logs matched the crates in the depot. Nothing more. But Clara's eyes told another story when no one was watching. They were not the eyes of someone who had never seen combat. They carried weight memories buried so deep that silence was the only way to hold them steady. Lisa, the young corporal at the desk across from her, leaned over with a smirk. "Careful with all that typing, Whitlock. Might get a paper cut. Imagine explaining that to the medic." The others chuckled. Clara said nothing. She pressed her lips together, set another page on the pile, and kept moving. The office swallowed her whole again, but beneath the hum of machines and the whispers of doubt, something restless stirred. Her sleeve tugged against her wrist as she stacked another report, the leather watch strap biting slightly against skin carved with secrets. No one in that room would have guessed that Clara Whitlock had ever been anywhere but behind a desk. No one suspected the truth that lived in the marks hidden beneath her sleeve. To them, she was only what they chose to see, a paper soldier. But paper could cut deeper than steel. And sooner than they knew, Clara Whitlock's story would no longer fit between the margins of their reports. It was already written, etched into her skin, waiting to be seen. The barracks were silent at night, save for the low hum of the heating pipes and the occasional creak of metal bedsprings. Most of the units slept easily, their bodies heavy with exhaustion after long days of drills and briefings. But Clara Whitlock's light still burned. A single desk lamp glowed in the corner, its shade tilted to keep her world half hidden. Her hands, rougher than anyone would have guessed, turned the pages of an old, grease-stained field manual. She traced each diagram with the tip of her finger, lips moving silently as she rehearsed procedures no one expected her to know. The rifle beside her chair gleamed faintly in the dull light. It wasn't supposed to be there. It had been borrowed, traded, maybe even smuggled, Clara never said. What mattered was that it fit in her hands with an ease that defied the whispers. She lifted it now, checking the weight, her fingers running over the grooves of the grip like a pianist memorizing a score. She chambered, unchambered, cleared, and reset, her motions smooth from repetition, not chance. Her palms bore the proof. The skin was hardened, scarred from nights spent training alone. Every callus was a line of defense against doubt, against the voices that told her she was nothing more than a clerk. She whispered the manual's words to herself like a prayer, each passage a reminder that knowledge could be stolen in the quiet, even when opportunity was denied in the open. The memory cut across time like a blade, pulling her back to a younger face, an arrogant soldier with laughter in his voice. He had watched her once, years ago, while she hefted a weapon outside the depot, during a rare moment of freedom. "You couldn't even handle a rifle," he scoffed, his smirk carrying the weight of every dismissal she had ever endured. Her answer had been quiet, almost swallowed by the air. "I already have." The words lingered, an echo that followed her across the years. The soldier had laughed, dismissing it as a joke. But there had been no joke in Clara's eyes, only memory. The rumor mill had its own story, though. Whispers of a deployment that never appeared in her file. A name buried under classified stamps and sealed orders. Just clerical support, the records claimed, though some swore she had been somewhere darker, somewhere blood was measured not in drops but in rivers. But gossip has a short half-life in the military. What could not be proven was forgotten. Forgotten by everyone except Clara. She set the rifle down carefully, the lamplight casting shadows over her wrist. The cuff of her fatigue slipped, exposing the edge of what she always hid. Tally marks, not inked, but carved into the skin, each one healed into permanence. She caught sight of them and immediately pulled the sleeve back into place, fastening her watch strap tight enough to press them out of sight. Clara exhaled slowly, steadying herself. The marks were hers alone, a language of survival and loss that no one else was meant to read. To reveal them would be to open a wound no paper could contain. The night deepened around her, the silence pressing in. She reached for the manual again, her lips forming the words, her hands rehearsing motions that had become second nature. To the world outside that barracks, Clara Whitlock was a paper soldier, trapped in a clerical cage. But here, in the whispering dark, the truth surfaced. She was forged in shadows, trained in silence, and marked by a past they would not understand. And while they slept, she prepared. Not for permission, not for recognition, for the moment when paper would no longer be enough and steel would once again demand her hand. The exercise was supposed to be routine, just another morning of drills, paperwork, and the dull rhythm of life inside the wire. The office buzzed with typewriters and the drone of voices when the first siren split the air. Red lights flared along the corridor, strobing across walls plastered with duty rosters and training schedules. The mechanical calm of the day collapsed in an instant. "Breach! Breach!" someone shouted from the hall. The words carried panic, not drill, Sergeant Bark. This wasn't scripted. The pounding of boots thundered against the floor as soldiers scrambled toward their stations. Clara Whitlock rose from her chair, her body already moving before her mind caught up. She slipped into the flow of chaos, but where others fumbled with gear or shouted for orders, she moved like someone who had rehearsed this very moment in silence. Her eyes locked on the weapons rack in the corner, unattended in the frenzy. She reached it without hesitation, her hands wrapping around the cold steel of a rifle. The weight settled against her shoulder like an old companion. Outside, the whir of engines grew sharper. Enemy drones skimmed low across the compound, their rotors slicing the air like angry wasps. The first one fired, strafing the yard with sparks and splintered concrete. Soldiers ducked, scattered, some firing wild shots that ricocheted uselessly. Clara stepped into the open. She leveled her rifle, drew in a measured breath, and squeezed the trigger. One burst, controlled. The drone jolted midair, spun, and crashed in a burst of flame. Before the smoke cleared, she shifted her stance, sighted the next, and fired again. A second machine fell, sparks spraying across the ground. The third came screaming overhead, but she pivoted, braced, and cut it from the sky with another crisp burst. Silence followed, heavy and stunned. Smoke curled into the air as the wreckage burned. Soldiers stared from behind cover, blinking as though they had imagined it. Major Kessler emerged from the chaos, his mouth half open, words failing him for once. His eyes tracked the way she reloaded. No panic, no fumbling, only smooth, practiced motion. He knew luck when he saw it. This was not luck, this was training. Real training. And then her cuff slipped. The leather strap of her watch tugged free for the briefest moment, revealing what she had guarded for years. Etched marks, dozens of them, carved into the skin of her wrist. Not ink, scars, each line a memory, each tally a life taken, a fight survived. Gasps spread through the soldiers nearby. One whispered, almost reverent, "She's been there." Another, voice unsteady, "She's done this before." The whispers carried, weaving through the ranks like a current of disbelief. Eyes once blind to her presence now fixed on her, as though seeing her for the first time. The paper soldier who filed their reports had just saved their lives with the precision of someone forged in battle. Clara pulled her sleeve back into place, fastening the strap tightly. Her expression remained calm, but her eyes gave nothing away. The rifle hung easily in her hands, smoke curling from the barrel, as if it belonged there. Major Kessler stood frozen, caught between denial and the evidence burning in front of him. He had dismissed her, mocked her place, confined her to paper. But in the ruins of the drones, in the scars hidden on her wrist, the truth could no longer be filed away. The sirens still wailed, the compound still trembled with threat, but for one suspended moment, all anyone could hear was the echo of 3 controlled bursts. 3 perfect shots that shattered the lie of who Clara Whitlock was. Smoke curled upward in the still air, drifting over the broken bodies of drones scattered across the compound. The metallic stench of burning circuitry mixed with dust and gunpowder, clinging to every breath. Soldiers stood frozen in the aftermath, rifles slack in their hands, eyes fixed not on the wreckage but on Clara Whitlock, who still held her weapon with quiet certainty. The firefight was over, but the silence that followed pressed down heavier than the sirens ever had. Major Kessler pushed through the crowd, his boots crunching on shattered concrete. His face was taut, jaw clenched, as though he could force the scene into something that made sense if he glared hard enough. He stopped a pace away from Clara, his eyes darting to the sleeve that had betrayed her secret. His voice was low, unsteady, despite his effort to sound commanding. "That mark? How many?" The question hung there, raw and sharp, daring her to answer. Clara didn't flinch. She let the silence stretch long enough for every ear in the yard to strain closer. Then, in the same even tone she had always used when filing reports or answering orders, she said, "Enough to stop underestimating me." The words rippled through the ranks like a shockwave. Soldiers who had once laughed behind her back shifted their weight, spines stiffening. Some glanced at one another, guilt flickering in their eyes. Others, younger and still wide-eyed from what they'd just witnessed, straightened instinctively, as if discipline demanded they recognize what they had missed all along. One by one, almost uncertain at first, hands rose in salute, not at Kessler, not at the chain of command, but at her. Clara's gaze didn't linger on their gestures. She lowered her rifle with care, sliding it back onto the rack, as though it were no more than another tool she had used in her work. Then she turned, her face composed, her expression carrying the weight of someone who had been dismissed too many times to be surprised by it anymore. "Paper, soldier?" she said, her voice carrying clear across the compound. "Maybe, but ink can outlast bullets, and I've carried both." The silence that followed was heavier than applause, thicker than any order barked on parade. It was recognition belated, reluctant, but real. Even Kessler couldn't mask it. His eyes dropped for a fraction of a second, not in shame, but in acknowledgement of the truth he could no longer bury under paperwork. Clara adjusted her sleeve once more, tugging it firmly over her wrist. sealing away the marks that had spoken louder than anything she could have said. She walked past them all without haste, her boots steady against the ground, each step erasing the picture they had painted of her in their minds. She didn't need their permission. She didn't need their approval. The sky had already seen her, the battles already remembered her, and the scars on her wrist carried proof deeper than any commendation. Behind her, whispers spread like smoke through the unit. They spoke not of a clerk, not of a paper soldier, but of someone they had overlooked until the battlefield forced their eyes open. For years, she had been a name at the bottom of a roster, a shadow behind a desk. Now, in the wreckage of silence, she was something more. They thought she was just a name on a file. Until the wrist showed the truth, the paper never could.